What would you do if a hungry man asked for food and your employee told him, "This ain't a charity line"? Hello, wise and wonderful listeners. You who value dignity, hard work, and decency. This story is for you. Today, we follow a CEO who went undercover to his roadside diner and witnessed the exact moment his company lost its soul. But instead of walking away, he stayed and rebuilt everything from the ground up. Quiet heroes, toxic culture, and second chances, this one has it all. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into a story that proves leadership is action, not a title. The diner's ceiling fan creaked overhead as the late afternoon sun poured through the smudged front windows of Ruby Jack's Americana Eats, casting long golden streaks across the cracked linoleum floor. Jack Brenner, 58, stood in line wearing a dusty ball cap and a faded denim jacket, his disguise as Doug, a weary traveler. Nobody recognized him as the founder of the chain. That was the point. He wanted the truth, unfiltered. Ahead of him, a gaunt older man in a worn army-sized coat lingered near the cash register, not asking for food outright, but quietly scanning the hot bar trays. His sunken cheeks and wind-burnt face suggested he hadn't had a real meal in days. "What you looking at, old man?" barked the short-order cook behind the counter, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Troy. "You think we're running a charity here?" The diner went quiet. The man's lips parted as if to respond, but no sound came. His eyes dropped, not from guilt, but from the kind of shame that wasn't his to carry. Jack's jaw clenched. He hadn't even made it to the front of the line, but he had already seen enough to understand something was wrong here. Just as Troy turned back toward the grill, muttering under his breath, a young waitress with auburn hair tucked into a messy bun stepped away from the drink station. Her name tag read Sierra. Without a word, she grabbed a plate and filled it with a small helping of meatloaf, potatoes, and green beans. She approached the man gently, almost whispering, "Just don't tell anyone I gave you this, okay?" The man blinked, as if unsure whether to trust his own senses. Then he nodded, his voice catching, "Thank you." From behind the salad bar, Troy slammed down a tray. "You serious, Sierra? What next, free meals for every drifter who walks in?" Sierra didn't flinch. "He's not a drifter, he's a person." Jack's eyes lingered on her, quiet, resolute, and completely unfazed by the risk. He stepped forward, pretending to glance at the menu, but what he was really watching was this, a single act of decency standing tall against a tide of indifference. As Sierra helped the man find a quiet corner booth, Jack looked out at the flickering neon sign just outside the window, half lit, half dead. That sign used to stand for something, and right now it told him everything he needed to know. This place had forgotten what it was built for. But Jack hadn't. And he wasn't leaving until it was remembered. Long before Ruby Jack's became a chain of 17 diners scattered along America's highways, it was just one trailer-sized grill in the back lot of a gas station outside Amarillo. Jack Brenner had started it with nothing but a fry basket, a coffee machine, and a promise to himself. No one who walked in hungry would walk out humiliated. He'd been a trucker then, eating on the road, tired of places that treated customers like cattle and staff like machines. So he quit the rig, mortgaged his small ranch, and turned a greasy lot into a place that felt like home, serving hot meals, warm coffee, and eye contact that meant something. Jack remembered those nights, scraping burned cheese off flat tops at 2 a.m., rolling silverware, offering a meal to a veteran who couldn't pay until next week, not out of pity, out of principle. It was never just about food. It was about dignity. But somewhere along the way, things changed. As the brand grew and investors circled, Ruby Jack's became more about systems than soul. Jack had pulled back, trusting the district managers to uphold what he'd built. He still checked in now and then, always under a fake name, sitting at the bar with a slice of pie and an ear open, but the numbers had started to tell him something he didn't want to admit. Some of the locations were losing what made them special. This diner in Arizona had always flown under the radar, middle of the pack, no major complaints, but now, seeing that man treated like trash, and that young waitress being scolded for compassion, Jack realized it wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about rot. Quiet rot. The kind that starts behind the fryer, in corners no one sweeps. He looked in the mirror that night back at the motel and saw the man he used to be. The one who worked with his hands, not just his phone. He rubbed his jaw and made a decision. No more surveys, no more blind spots. He wasn't going to fix this place from a spreadsheet. He'd built Ruby Jacks with elbow grease, hard conversations, and the belief that small kindnesses built big loyalty, and if it needed to be rebuilt, then he'd do it again, with his own hands, as the place might bear his name, but it had forgotten his values, and he was about to remind me of it. Jack arrived before sunrise the next morning, parking his truck along the far edge of the cracked lot where the light barely reached. The air was sharp, still holding the chill of desert dawn. He didn't enter through the front this time. Instead, he walked around back, pulled out the worn key card he hadn't used in over 4 years, and slipped through the employee entrance. The kitchen lights buzzed dimly as prep cooks chopped onions and servers leaned against counters with folded aprons, scrolling their phones. No one looked up, until he stepped into the break room and closed the door behind him. Moments later, Dana Ortiz, the store manager, came in holding a clipboard and coffee, expecting a routine start to her day. Her steps faltered when she saw him. "Mr. Brenner," she said, stiffening. "You're—" He cut her off gently but firmly. "We're talking. Right now." Dana led him into the dining room, still dark except for a few overhead fluorescents. The chairs were flipped onto tables. The floor smelled faintly of bleach and baking grease. Jack gestured to a booth near the window. "Sit." She obeyed without argument. "I was here yesterday," he began, voice low and steady, "in this diner. Sat at that corner booth. Watched a man get humiliated because he was hungry. And I watched your line cook, Troy, berate a server for doing the right thing." Dana opened her mouth, but Jack raised a hand. "Don't. You didn't see it because you weren't on the floor. You were in the back, managing a schedule instead of your culture." He stood, his presence filling the quiet room. "Bring everyone in. Now. Before we open." Minutes later, the full team assembled in a loose circle, some still tying aprons, others rubbing sleep from their eyes. Troy strolled in last, arms crossed, wearing yesterday's grease-stained cap like a badge of pride. Jack didn't stand on a stool or clear his throat. He just spoke. "My name is Jack Brenner. I own this place. I built it with my own hands." His widened. Silence dropped like a curtain. "Yesterday I watched a man get mocked for being hungry, and I watched one of you, Sierra, stand up and help him without asking permission. She represented this company better than any manual ever written." He turned to Troy. "And you? You're done here." Troy blinked. "Wait, what? You don't speak for this company. You don't humiliate people. You're not a leader. You're a liability. Hand over your apron and leave." Troy looked around, waiting for someone to defend him. No one moved. With a bitter scoff, he yanked off his apron, threw it on a chair, and stormed out the back door. Jack turned back to the staff. "This stops now. The old culture, gone. From today on, we will rebuild, together." As the tension in the room eased after Troy's exit, Jack turned his attention to Sierra, the young waitress who had offered the hungry man a meal the day before. She stood near the back, half shielded behind a taller coworker, her hands nervously twisting the edge of her apron. Jack took a few steps toward her, his voice softening, but firm enough for everyone to hear. "You didn't wait for permission. You didn't ask if it was okay. You just did what was right. That tells me everything I need to know about you." Sierra's eyes widened slightly, clearly not used to being the center of attention. "Especially not in front of the whole team. Most people stay quiet," Jack continued. "They look the other way. But you didn't. You stepped in, quietly, respectfully, and you changed the tone of the room." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his back pocket, a promotion form already signed and dated. "Starting today, you're our new floor supervisor," he announced. "Your raise kicks in next week, and if you're still interested in management, we'll start training you alongside Dana. No pressure, just an opportunity." The room was silent, then a few scattered nods. Sierra looked stunned, her mouth parting slightly. I didn't do it for this, she murmured. I know, Jack said. That's why you deserve it. Jack then looked back at the rest of the staff. Let this be clear. If you treat people with respect, even when no one's watching, you won't be punished for it. You'll be recognized. That's the new standard. Not just for guests, for each other too. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. This wasn't corporate fluff. It was a line in the sand. As the team slowly returned to their stations, the air felt different. Not completely fixed, but changed. For Sierra, it was the first time anyone in authority had ever called her actions leadership. She hadn't set out to make a statement. She just refused to look away. And that refusal had become the spark. Jack watched her return to the front counter with quiet resolve, already helping another server reorganize the silverware drawer. No applause, no spotlight, just quiet dignity, the kind that held more weight than any job title ever could. By late morning, the diner was humming with the clatter of plates, the hiss of the griddle, and the low din of breakfast chatter. Jack made his rounds quietly, watching not just the guests, but his people. That's when he noticed Marcus at the grill. The young cook moved like he was walking through molasses, favoring his right leg with every step. His shirt clung to his back, sweat forming along his brow despite the air conditioning. Jack stepped behind the prep counter, pretending to refill napkins, but his eyes were sharp. Every time Marcus shifted weight, there was a subtle wince. After the rush, Jack caught him at the cooler, leaning heavily against the doorframe. "You've been limping since you clocked in," Jack said, voice low and even. Marcus stiffened but didn't look up. "Tweaked my knee last week," he muttered. "It's fine." Jack folded his arms. "Why didn't you report it?" Marcus hesitated. "Didn't want to mess up the shift. Christina's short in the back. Figured I could push through." That answer hit Jack harder than he expected. It was something he might have said 30 years ago. And that was exactly the problem. "You think pushing through pain makes you dependable," Jack said quietly. "But all it does is tell the people in charge that it's okay to let you suffer in silence. And that's not how we run things anymore." Marcus blinked, unsure whether he was being reprimanded or rescued. "Go sit down," Jack continued. "You're off the line for now. I'll cover until someone else rotates in." Marcus looked up, startled. "You? Seriously?" "Yes," Jack replied, already tying on a spare apron. Within seconds, Jack was behind the grill, flipping patties and calling out orders with practiced rhythm. He moved with a calm efficiency that surprised even the longtime staffers. A couple of heads peeked through the service window, watching the man who signed their checks man the line like he never left. Marcus returned 15 minutes later, looking sheepish. "Have you run this place before or something?" he asked. Jack handed over the spatula with a small grin. "Something like that." Later that afternoon, Jack called Marcus into the office and said simply, "You're staying on payroll this week. Full pay. Light duty only until that leg's solid. And once you're back, you'll shadow our training lead. I think you've got potential, beyond the grill." Marcus started, stunned. "Me?" Jack nodded. "You don't complain, you adapt, you care. That's rare. I invest in rare things." And for the first time all day, Marcus stood a little taller. That afternoon, as the lunch crowd thinned and the energy dipped, Jack found Dana Ortiz seated in the office, buried under a tangle of shift schedules, inventory printouts, and employee call-out notes. Her posture sagged, eyes strained. When Jack entered, she straightened quickly, but he motioned for her to stay seated. "We need to talk," he said. "Not about Troy. About you." Dana hesitated, setting her pen down slowly. "I've been trying to hold it together," she said, voice cracking, more than she meant it to. "The last 6 months, it's been one hit after another. People quit with no notice, temps don't show up. We've had weeks where I've worked doubles just to keep the doors open. I didn't think complaining would help." Jack pulled up a chair across from her. "You didn't need to complain. You needed to raise the flag." Loudly. He leaned forward. "You're not supposed to do this alone, Dana. You're a manager, not a martyr. There's a difference." She rubbed her forehead, sighing. "I just didn't want it to reflect poorly on me." I figured I'd look like I couldn't handle it. Jack shook his head. You know what reflects poorly? Burned out staff, injuries on the line, toxic leadership left unchecked. What reflects well? Calling for backup before the fire spreads. He paused, letting the silence settle between them. You've been here longer than most. You've weathered rough seasons. But trying isn't enough anymore. You have to lead, not just endure. That means coaching, communicating, and reporting upward when your bench is broken. Dana looked down at the schedule again, her fingers tightening around the paper. I've been patching holes so long I stopped seeing the cracks. Jack softened his tone. Then here's what's next. You'll start flagging staffing gaps to regional immediately. I'll make sure they respond. You're going to identify 2 people. Sierra and Marcus are good starts, and begin mentoring them. They'll carry some of the weight, but only if you invest in them. I'll schedule check-ins with you every other week. Not to micromanage, to partner. But if this place doesn't stabilize in 1 quarter, we'll have to revisit your position. Dana looked up, face tight with pressure, but no longer with resistance. Understood, she said quietly. Jack stood. You're not failing, Dana, but you stopped asking for help. That's what changes now. She gave a slow nod, a touch of relief in her eyes. For the first time in months, she wasn't alone in carrying the weight, and that made all the difference. Just before the dinner rush hit, Jack wandered toward the dessert bar, where a young employee named Jesse, barely out of high school, nervously fumbled with a tray of banana pudding. His hands trembled as he tried to replace the dish without spilling it. Hovering beside him was a sharp-voiced woman in a crisp polo shirt and corporate badge, Danielle Foster, a regional training consultant sent in for a quarterly audit. Her voice, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, was curt and cutting. That's not how you rotate the trays. I told you 5 times. You're wasting product and embarrassing yourself. She jabbed her finger at the printed guide she held, her tone laced with condescension. Jesse's ears turned red. He mumbled an apology, his eyes locked on the floor. Guests glanced over uncomfortably. Jack approached quietly, placing himself between Danielle and Jesse. Everything okay here? He asked, though his voice already carried a warning edge. Danielle straightened, surprised. Mr. Brenner, I didn't realize you were still here. I'm just trying to ensure policy's being followed. Jack looked at her, then at Jesse, who still hadn't moved. That's not coaching, he said calmly. Danielle opened her mouth to protest, but Jack didn't let her. Correcting someone in front of customers isn't training. It's humiliation. And it reflects poorly on you, not him. He turned to Jesse, voice softening. Are you doing your best, kid? Jesse nodded slowly. Then, that's all I ask. Ask Sierra or Marcus if something doesn't make sense. They'll walk you through it. You're not expected to know everything on day 1. Jesse exhaled, a sliver of relief visible in his shoulders. Jack then faced Danielle again. Step off the floor. HR will be following up regarding your conduct. Her face flushed as she quietly stepped away, clipboard in hand. No scene, no yelling, just clear, firm boundaries. Jack stayed near the dessert bar for a while, helping Jesse restock trays and chatting casually about high school and video games. It wasn't about pastries. It was about building trust, because in Jack's company, training wasn't fear-based. It was people first, and this young man deserved better than shame. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon and the diner's neon sign flickered to life, this time fully lit, the atmosphere inside felt noticeably different. The clatter of dishes and soft buzz of conversation still filled the room, but the energy had shifted. Sierra moved with quiet confidence across the floor, checking in on tables, giving a nod of reassurance to a new hire as she passed. Marcus, now stationed at cold prep, took slower, more deliberate steps, no longer masking his limp, but also no longer ashamed of it. He organized containers with calm focus, occasionally offering tips to Jesse, who was now working the dessert station with much more ease. The fear in his movements had faded, replaced with a quiet determination. Jack watched from the far end of the diner, sipping a cup of decaf and jotting notes. He didn't need to hover anymore. The leadership was starting to come from within. Staff members who barely made eye contact yesterday were now communicating in small but powerful ways. A hand on the shoulder, a shared smile, a tray carried for a teammate behind schedule. The toxic undercurrent that once seeped through every corner had begun to lift. Respect was becoming the norm, not the exception. Then came the final sign that things were turning. A woman in her mid-40s, wearing a school security badge, stepped hesitantly up to the counter. Her uniform was clean but worn, her shoes scuffed. "I've only got about $6, she said softly, her voice apologetic. "Just need something to take home, maybe a few sides." Before the cashier could answer, Sierra stepped up beside her. "We've got a community plate we offer when we can," she said warmly. "Big 3 hot items. Whatever you like. I'll pack it up for you." The woman blinked in surprise. "Seriously?" "Seriously," Sierra replied, already reaching for a to-go container. Jack said nothing, just smiled slightly and glanced around. No eye-rolling, no sighs. Not even a flinch from the rest of the staff. This act of kindness didn't feel rebellious or risky. It felt normal. That was the victory. The kind that doesn't come from policies or memos, but from people deciding to care. Ruby Jax was beginning to remember what it was built for. And now, so was everyone inside. The next morning, before the doors opened for the breakfast crowd, Jack scheduled 3 one-on-one sit-downs in the break room. No forms, no clipboards, no HR jargon. Just 2 chairs, a pot of coffee, and a simple question. "Tell me the hardest part of your job." Sierra was the first to walk in, her shoulders squared but her fingers fidgeting slightly in her lap. When Jack asked the question, she didn't hesitate. "Feeling like I'm the only one who cares when something goes wrong," she said. "I don't mind working hard, I actually like it. But when people cut corners or treat folks poorly, and no one speaks up, I start wondering if I'm the problem, for caring too much." Jack nodded slowly. "You're not the problem. You're the example. That's why you're stepping into more responsibility. Starting next week, you'll shadow Dana. Scheduling, vendor calls, shift management. We'll take it slow, but I want you prepared." Sierra's eyes widened. "You really think I can do that?" "You already are, now we're just making it official." Next came Marcus, who walked in with less of a limp than the day before but still moved cautiously. Jack leaned back, arms crossed. "What's the hardest part for you?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "Feeling like if I say anything's wrong, my leg, a bad rush, a mistake, I'll get replaced. I've always worked scared." Jack leaned in. "You won't anymore. You'll stay on full pay while you heal. After that, you're going into training development. I've seen the way you coach without even knowing you're doing it. That matters." Marcus blinked hard. "No one's ever said I had potential. Not at work, not at home." "Then they've been blind," Jack said quietly. "But I'm not." Finally, Dana stepped in, her usual clipboard left behind. She sat down with a deep sigh. "Hardest part?" Jack asked. "Feeling like the whole thing's going to collapse if I take a breath," she said. "Like if I stop moving, the walls come down." Jack nodded. "You've held it together longer than most could, but now you lead it forward, not alone. You've got Sierra and Marcus, you've got me, but you've got to communicate up the chain. That's the only way we stay standing." Dana nodded, this time without the weight of self-blame in her eyes. For the first time in months, she wasn't managing panic. She was making a plan. Jack looked around the quiet room, and for the first time all week, it felt like the foundation was finally settling. And it was solid. By the end of the week, Ruby Jax felt like a different place. Not perfect, not polished, but breathing again. The hum of conversation carried a softer tone, the clang of plates had lost its tension, and the staff moved with a rhythm that came not from fear or routine, but from mutual respect. Jack didn't need spreadsheets to tell him what had changed. He saw it in the way Marcus mentored Jesse over at the salad bar, patiently correcting a tray setup without condescension. He saw it in Dana, visible now on the floor instead of buried in the office, checking in on servers with a steady presence that hadn't been there days ago. He saw it most in Sierra, who floated across the floor like she'd been doing this her whole life. She redirected a flustered teen trainee with a gentle word, helped a guest carry coffee to the table, and spotted a crying child before the parents even noticed, crouching beside her with a napkin and a soft smile. Jack stood quietly near the front counter as the last wave of the dinner rush tapered off. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the tile floor, and the freshly repaired neon sign outside buzzed gently, reflectively lit now. He had it fixed that morning. A small thing maybe, but symbolic. No more flickering, no more halfway. As he gathered his jacket and keys, preparing to slip out the side door unnoticed, Sierra called out to him, "Mr. Brenner?" He turned. She hesitated a beat, then smiled. "Thanks, not just for showing up, but for staying, for actually helping fix it." Jack gave a soft chuckle. "Fixing it?" he repeated. "That was the easy part." He glanced around the diner, watching Marcus wipe down the prep counter while Jessie refilled the dessert trays with practiced calm. Dana waved goodbye to her family and marked something in her logbook. "Keeping it right," Jack said, looking back at Sierra. "That's the real work. And it's not on me. It's on all of us." She nodded, understanding that this wasn't about policy. It was about people, about culture, about care. Jack stepped outside into the crisp evening air. No fanfare, no final speech, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing something broken had been mended, with time, attention, and the right hands. He paused once more at the window, looking in at the team he almost lost to silence and indifference. Then he turned, climbed into his truck, and drove off into the fading light, not as a CEO looking down from above, but as a man who finally remembered why he built it all in the first place. The story of Ruby Jax teaches a timeless lesson. Leadership isn't about titles, policies, or staying hidden behind spreadsheets. It's about presence, accountability, and humanity. When Jack Brenner saw a vulnerable man humiliated and a kind employee punished for compassion, he realized that the soul of his company had drifted from its roots. Fixing broken systems starts not with policy memos, but with listening, showing up, and leading by example. By confronting toxicity head-on, uplifting quiet heroes like Sierra and Marcus, and reminding his team that dignity is not optional, Jack reignited a culture built on care, not control. For older audiences, particularly those who've lived through decades of change, this story reinforces what they've always known: the small things, respect, mentorship, doing what's right when no one's watching, are what truly matter. It's a powerful reminder that success means nothing if you lose your values along the way. And rebuilding doesn't start with punishment. It starts with presence. Jack didn't need to fix everything. He just needed to stay long enough to inspire others to fix it with him.